poem can contain many elements to give it structure. Rhyme is perhaps the most common of these elements. Countless poetic works from limericks to epic poems to pop lyrics contain rhymes. But equally important is meter, which imposes specific length and emphasis on a given line of poetry. Meter is a way of measuring a line of poetry based on the rhythm of the words. But why should you care? As a reader, knowing about meter helps you understand how a poem is put together. You can see what rules the poet was following and how he or she used or went outside those rules. This lets you guess what was going through the poet's mind. And if you want to write poetry, knowing about meter will make you a better poet. First, it helps you understand what poets have done in the past so that you can learn from them. It allows you to use traditional forms such as sonnets. Even if you prefer to write in free verse, you should learn about traditional forms. Being aware of traditions gives you more flexibility to use aspects of them when you want to, or to break the rules in a more interesting way. So what do we mean by meter? Meter measures lines of poetry based on stressed and unstressed syllables. I'll explain. When we speak, we put the stress on a certain part of each word. For example, take the words apple and fantastic. When we say the word apple, we stress the first syllable, the ap part. We say apple, not apple. When we say the word fantastic, we stress the second syllable. We say fantastic, not fantastic or fantastic. In poetry, a unit of stress and unstressed syllables is called a foot. For example, look at this line from Shakespeare. No longer mourn for me when I am dead. The rhythm is ba 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 ba. We read it like this. No longer mourn for me when I'm dead. The type of foot Shakespeare used here is called an iamb. An iamb or an iambic foot has the rhythm ba ba. An unstressed syllable then followed by a stressed syllable. Again, it's unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Ba ba. The iamb is the most common kind of foot in English poetry. So here are 3 examples of words that have an iambic rhythm. Ba ba. For example, above, support, hooray. So again, the stress was placed in the second syllable of each word. Here's a sentence written in iambic meter. His noisy snoring woke the neighbor's dog. Ba 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 ba. Okay? So aside from iamb, there are other types of foot. The first one is we have trochee or trochaic foot. This is the opposite of an iamb. So the rhythm is ba ba, like the words poet and father. So the stress is placed in the first syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. Next we have the Anapest or the Anapestic foot. This has 3 syllables. So this sounds like ba ba ba. So the stress is in the third syllable, like the words underneath, 17, or what the heck. Next, we also have the dactyl or dactylic foot. This is the opposite of an Anapest. It also has 3 syllables, but the rhythm is ba ba ba. So the stress is in the first syllable. Examples are elephant and stepmother. Now, when we think about the meter of a poem, in addition to looking at the kind of foot, we also count the number of feet in each line. So if there's 1 foot per line, then we call it phonometer. Okay? That means to say that if there's only 1 foot per line, there are only 2 syllables in each line. So that's very rare. Poetry written in monometer is very rare. Now, when we have 2 feet per line, we have diameter, 3 feet, trimeter, 4 feet tetrameter, 5 feet pentameter, 6 feet hexameter, 7 feet heptameter, and 8 feet octameter. So again, if there are 2 feet per line, it's called diameter. Here's a sentence in trochaic diameter. Eat your dinner. So it has eat your dinner, 4 syllables, right? Again, 1 foot has 2 syllables. And it has a trochaic rhythm. So ba 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 ba. Eat your dinner. Now, if we had 3 feet per line, we call it trimeter. Here's a sentence in iambic trimeter. I eat the bread and cheese. Ba 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 ba. Okay, so we have 6 syllables here. Because again, 1 foot has 2 syllables, and then we have tri, so 2 times 3, that's 6. Okay? Next, if we have 4 feet per line, we call it tetrameter. Here's a sentence in Jukay tetrameter. Father ordered extra pizza. So ba 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 ba. Now, if we have 5 feet per line, we call it pentameter. Here's a sentence in iambic pentameter. I'll toast the bread and melt a piece of cheese. 6 feet per line, we call it hexameter or alexandrine. So a sentence in iambic hexameter is, I'll toast the bread and melt a piece of cheese, okay? And if we have 7 feet per line, we call it heptameter. I guess you get the idea, right? At this point, let's talk about verse. Verse is a line in traditional poetry that is written in meter. For example, when I do count the clock that tells the time. That's from Shakespeare's sonnet number 12. Now, when we say traditional form, these are poems with rhyme and with meter. And when we talk about free verse, unlike metered poetry, free verse poetry does not have any repeating patterns of stressed and unstressed syllables. It does not have rhythm. That's why we call it free. So free verse poetry is very conversational. It sounds like someone is talking to you. And it is a modern type of poetry. Now, blank verse is different from free verse. So when we say blank verse, it is written in lines of iambic pentameter, but does not use end rhyme. So it has meter, but without rhyme. So blank verse is poetry written with a precise meter, almost always like an iambic pentameter, but it doesn't rhyme. Wherein free verse poetry is poetry that lacks a consistent rhyme scheme, metrical pattern, or musical form. While free verse poems are not devoid of structure, they allow enormous leeway for poets, particularly when compared to more metrically strict forms like a blank verse. Can you recall some of your favorite poem way back in elementary and junior high school? Can you identify structures? Which of the structure examples do you think are the most common? When you read metered poetry such as a sonnet in iambic pentameter, you may notice that the meter is sometimes sounds uneven or is hard to hear. Meter is just a form of measurement. The real rhythm of a poem is more complicated than that. None of us talk like robots. We give certain words and sounds more emphasis than others in a sentence, depending on a number of factors, including the meaning of the words and our own personal speaking style. So not all of the stressed syllables have the same amount of stress, etc. We also pause at the ends of ideas or the ends of sentences, even if these occur partway through a poetic line. So this creates a rhythmically variation. When the sentence ends or has a natural pause in the middle of a line of poetry, we call that Sora. And finally, all of these elements combine to give each poem a unique music. And that's a wrap for this video. Thank you so much for watching.